Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Diary of a Sales Engineer. We're episode 32, and my name is Samir Sahai Kausar with my favorite co-host,
Ryan Kruger, and today we have a very special guest with us. We're joined by James Kaikis, a longtime leader in pre-sales and go-to-market, and truly one of the most influential voices in the sales engineering community. Now, most people know James as the co-founder of the Pre-Sales Collective, but he's also the founder of GTM Shift, a co-founder of AI Revenue Studio, and most recently, the co-founder of Solution Exec, a private network dedicated to moving the solutions professions forward. He spent his career helping technical teams move past feature-heavy demos and focus on telling clear, compelling stories that actually help buyers make decisions. He's worked closely with some of the best pre-sales teams in SaaS, shaping how sales engineers show value, earn trust, and win deals in modern GTM motions. Now, there's also one fun fact for the listeners of the podcast today. So all of you know that the way that I was actually introed into sales engineering was from one of my friends over a conversation at lunch. A little fun fact about that conversation is that my friend was actually an account executive over at Showpad. And that's actually the reason why he said, "Hey, you actually need to get involved in sales engineering. And I have a resource that you should actually reach out to, connect with on LinkedIn." And that was right around the time that James had created the Pre-Sales Collective. So honestly, without that conversation at lunch, without James, I truly don't know if I'm in sales engineering. I don't know if we have the Diary of a Sales Engineer podcast today. So honestly, this has just been genuinely like, I'm so excited for today, and it's an honor to have you on.
Man, what a good way to start, guys. That's awesome. I really appreciate you having me, Ryan. Love that you shared that story. I always joke about the Game of Thrones intro. Like that felt like a Game of Thrones intro. So I appreciate the highlight, guys. It's awesome to be here. And I think where I want to start is thanking both of you, right? 32 episodes. People will say, "Hey, I want to do a podcast." It's a hard thing to do, right? And do it consistently and do it at high quality. And I don't know about the two of you, but with Pre-Sales Collective podcast, that was one of the most rewarding things that I did, right? So many people would reach out to me, say, "Hey, I listen to your podcast while I run or I do my dishes." Like the dishes one was a very popular one. People, learned, they got jobs, they made friends, they learned, build a network. And I think that's the most rewarding thing. So I think this is cool, and I love what you guys are doing. I'm sure you have similar stories. I don't know if you've got a favorite story to share. But I think that's why I really applaud the two of you for doing this and doing it consistently.
yeah, definitely get those awesome DMs of, especially when people who are trying to break in. I remember I had one, he had like DM'd me 6 months and then I like missed it. And he DM'd me again and replied. He's like, "Oh," he originally DM'd, "Oh, I was looking for a job. Can you have any resources?" Found the pod. I completely missed it. And then 6 months later, he's like, "Hey, I got a job. Thanks
Amazing.
for your thanks for XYZ episode." And I was like, "Oh, make sure you check out this one." He's like, "Yeah, I've already checked it out." And I'm like implementing it within the new job, and it's been really well and thanking us. And that always like brings us a lot of joy because we do this because we like talking about sales engineering and also want more people to know about it and more people to get into it. And then recently, kind of a cool one was I was doing a customer onboarding and introducing myself, and one of the people in the chat, he's like, "Are you also the Diary of a Sales Engineer? I'm a big fan." And I was like, "Oh my god, like people know us." So that was those are some two that come to mind for me. I know Ryan had another cool one in person, actually.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, like, probably one of my favorite experiences so far was I was actually leaving a concert, and as we were leaving, somebody yelled out, they're like, "Hey, Ryan, what's up?" And I'm like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And we had briefly met over like a virtual cup of coffee, and he said he was a listener of the show, and like he came up and he said hello, and then he walked away. My wife was like, "What was that?" And he's like, "I was like, oh, there's a fan of the podcast," and she's like, "How cool is that? Like, we were leaving a concert, you had somebody come up to you." So that that instance to me really stands out. But one thing that I've really just appreciated so much about, our journey into the Diary of a Sales Engineer is, from the very moment of me kind of making my way into sales engineering, there was this large imposter syndrome that I've felt. And even to this day, like there's still times where I feel that very, deeply. And it's been really cool to me to just watch other people reach out and say how impactful this has been, whether they're getting a new job, whether they got the job and they found something to be really helpful, whether they're doing some technical storytelling and they let me know, "Hey, I tried something different today because of something you guys had mentioned." And to me, like all of that helps like squash a little bit of the imposter syndrome that I've had. And, it's just been a really cool experience. And so I really appreciate getting all those messages. And honestly, it's my favorite part and why we continue doing this and why we're 32 episodes in.
Yeah, love it, guys. Well, anyone listening, if you've enjoyed listening to these guys, send them a note, send them a thank you. I think people forget like the small thank yous just go a long way. It goes a long way. The concert story is awesome and the onboarding story is awesome. So that's cool, guys. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, go for it, Ryan.
Yeah, I think, one of the things, James, our listeners are going to be, actively listening for today is just, wanting to know, like, since you've left the pre-sales collective, like, can we get an update onto all
Yeah.
the amazing things you're doing? I gave the Game of Thrones introduction today. There's tons of different companies in there, but like, give us an update. What have you
Yeah.
been doing? What's coming next?
Amazing. Well, I appreciate that. Maybe even taking a quick step back, right? Building Pre-Sales Collective was easily to this day the most rewarding thing I ever did with my career. And my exit was not as I had hoped or planned. And lightly talking about these things, when Yuji and I decided to do Pre-Sales Collective, we just both put $1,000 into the business and said, like, let's see where this thing goes. We knew it'd be successful. We had no idea what success would look like. And as you two know, and some people do too, it's now like the premier resource for the profession. And it's really incredible how it's grown and how it's evolved. And the big thing for me is I always felt an immense obligation to the profession, right? I always felt that we need to cater to everyone, kind of trying to support everybody, which was really hard to do. But to do that, we actually sold the business in fall 2021. And I and the team, we all worked for a parent company, and that parent company, builds and buys communities. So like they are community experts. And our mind was, hey, if we move on to go build something else, they've got the expertise to let this grow forever, right? Because like the legacy aspects is important. And ultimately, I made a decision that I didn't want to work for the parent company anymore. I wanted to do something else, and that's when the exit happened. And obviously, a lot wasn't communicated. And I've been a little bit more vocal recently that I kind of like hid and went into like my chamber for a little bit, right? Because it was a really emotional thing, right? To step away, because even though we had sold the business prior, we had a lot of autonomy to run the business as we wanted to run it, right? And ultimately, though, I found that I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't the best version of myself personally or professionally, and said, hey, I need to take a break. And that was hard to do, right? It was a hard breakup. But when I took like 2 months off, I logged out of LinkedIn. I deleted my Slack. Like my brother changed my passwords for me, and I got to reset, right? I got to reset, and I got to think, what did I want to do differently? Because AI was really starting to be on top of the forefront, on top of conversations, and I was like, where do I want to spend my time? And I was like, hey, if AI is moving as fast as it is in this like short couple month window, right? This is fall 2023 at this point, right? I was like, I should go work in another company that is building in this space. And I was like, I want to be a head of go to market. I want to be a CRO. And I was like, being an entrepreneur with Pre-Sales Collective taught me that the solutions profession is so well equipped to be an entrepreneur because, we are generalists, right? We see so many different facets of a business. It's like, wow, I could do this, right? That imposter syndrome, Ryan, like I was battling that for a long time, right? And then I got my confidence and I was like, I think about customer experience. I think about customer journey. I want to go own revenue. And I decided to go to Testbox among a couple of different opportunities because I liked the way that they were building synthetic data to solve demo automation. And I was like, this is a space that I know well. Let me go and see what I can do. And I will say, like, I haven't said a lot of this publicly, but I wanted to put my money where my mouth was. I talked about all these things with go to market as part of Pre-Sales Collective. Now it's like, let me go live it. And so that people listening could say, wow, James just went and ran a revenue team. If James can run a revenue team, maybe I can go run a revenue team. And there have been plenty of people who've reached out to me, like we talked about, that have actually gone and done that. So I did the CRO thing for about 2 years and decided it was time for me to focus on entrepreneurship again, right? It was calling me. And a lot of people don't know, but go-to-market shift has existed since 2020. It used to be called an organizational shift. That was the name of my business like 6 years ago. Fun fact, because it started with an AN, so that if anything directory was alphabetical, I would be at the top. That was actually the strategy behind that, right? That's the solutions engineer thinking right there. And I decided that go-to-market shift would be my consulting agency. And now fast forward, Go to Market Shift, I've got my own interview series. I've got a newsletter. We're doing in-person events, and it's catered toward all of go-to-market. So I do a lot of work with VCs, CROs, CEOs about pushing things forward because a lot of change is happening. And I could dive into those details, but like that's what that medium has become. And it's actually really incredible to see how that has grown. It's turned into keynote presentations, sales kickoffs, all kind of really fun things to all of go-to-market, right? And it's not just being in solutions. And I tell people that my solutions background has really set me up for success. And then AI Revenue Studio was built out of kind of go-to-market shift. We had companies, because I built an AI first go-to-market motion at Testbox, coming to me saying, hey, how do I become AI proficient? Like, how do I do this? Like, whoa, you had those kind of wins? Like, can you show me how to do that? And myself and my co-founder, Jody Geiger, who was the head of sales at Clue, was doing the same thing. And we said, hey, let's bring this to the market. Let's train people to be AI proficient. Let's train them to be AI savvy. And it's not like learn the tools, it's rethinking systems and workflows. And so we've got a class for ICs, leaders, and then we're also partnering with David Malouf to do AI powered solutions engineer, right? So a very technical version of what we're doing for the solutions engineering function. And then I'll pause here momentarily, but I just launched Solution Exec, and Solution Exec to me has the opportunity to be the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my career because it's a lot of learnings from Pre-Sales Collective, a lot of learnings from being involved in Pavilion and other communities, and catering to the super senior solutions executive and the leader that needs the resource to navigate this next wave of go to market. I'll tell you finally, I'll give you the personal approach to this, right? I've got a 13-year-old daughter who lives with her mom in Hawaii. I've got a 14-month at home. My wife and I are family planning. It has been impossible for me to be a good husband, a good father, a son, a brother, a friend, and a good professional. And I decided that I was going to do what I believe is going to be the hardest thing in my entire career. And it's run these businesses with amazing co-founders and people on my support side to give me the flexibility and freedom to be challenged professionally, yet personally present, which I have not been for like 10 or 15 years, to be honest with you. Right. So I know that was a long answer, but I haven't really talked about a lot of this stuff, right? I haven't talked about it. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I think I want to like jump in, kind of right away as like one, what an inspiration you are, I think, to the entire solutions community as a whole. Like, I think for a lot of sales engineers, myself included, one of the nice things is because we are so generalist is that you do have the ability to spin off into many different career facets, right? If you're a little bit more marketing heavy, you can go that route. If you're a little bit more product heavy, you can go into product marketing, or you can go into product
Mhm.
itself. You can go back into engineering. There's just so many different avenues you can go to. But I do find that, like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, like, here it is. You've actually laid the tracks for it. And then on the last piece that you mentioned, like, I want to hit on this too, because I have an 8-month-old at home. It has been one of the most challenging just times in my life of trying to balance both being an amazing professional and also present at home. Like, it's a big challenge. Samir knows the challenges that I face, especially when you're talking about weeks and weeks and weeks of not sleeping in a row. And then you have to wake up and then you're on calls for 8 hours in a row. Like, that becomes a very challenging thing. And so for anybody else out there struggling with that, like, just know you're not alone, but you can make your way out of it. But you just got to put the right sort of tools and processes in place, like both in your personal life as well as your professional life, to make sure that the boundaries are there and that you can do both things. It's not one or the other.
Yeah, well said, right? It comes with a lot of intention, right? I tell you, a lot of intention. Like, for example, even recently, I'm still working through this. I made an agreement with my wife that I would be off my computer around 5:30 or 6 every night to be available for dinner, right? That has been very hard for me, where she'd be like, hey, dinner's ready. And I'm like, 5 more minutes. Guess who's up 25 minutes later and dinner's cold? You know what I mean? Like, and that's a commitment that breaks trust over time, right? And so, putting those boundaries, and I love to work, right? My wife knows, like, man, sometimes my favorite day is like a Tuesday where I'll start at like 5 or 6 in the morning and end at 11 or 12. Like, I love those days every once in a while because it allows me to get so far ahead that I can be present for the next couple of weeks. But it does take intentions. It takes guardrails. And as you said, Ryan, it takes prioritization and saying no to things, right? That's been the biggest learning in this, is like saying no and just kind of understand like how you ruthlessly prioritize your time and your energy to be the best version of yourself. Because this has been something that I haven't been, is like the best version of myself in every facet. And even professionally, there's some things people know. If you ever work for me, there's times that James is great at this and times James is not so great at this because my energy is somewhere else. So you're right. People, you're not alone. And I think I love is people are talking about this more, right? Like it's just been like this weird thing that we didn't talk about for so long.
Mhm.
And even me, right? I don't like to talk about it, but it's like, because I almost look at it as a weakness, right? But it's not weakness. It's actually a strength to talk about this and have awareness and acknowledgement on how you show up in life. Not that this is a life podcast, top of mind.
It's definitely top of mind for me too. I just how do I be present with my wife when I am with her and not my mind on whatever it is I'm working on for work. It's like, okay, once I leave my desk, I leave my desk and leave work there with it. And even with dinner, sometimes I'll have my phone, Slack will go off and like she'll give me a look and I was like, all right, I'll go put
Yeah.
that away
Yeah.
and go put it face down or put it away so it doesn't buzz and distract me. And so I think that's like very, very important.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you on that's Samir, right? It was a couple generations ago, right? Before there were cell phones, like people left work at work, right? You had to call the house landline to get a hold of somebody in the evening, right? It wasn't phones or wasn't email. So it was a lot easier to do that. And nowadays where everything's 24/7, like I was wearing an Apple Watch for a while and I leave my phone to the side, but my Apple Watch is going off at dinner, right? So it's like, oh, I got to take that off too. So I hear you, man. It's hard, right? You got a big demo the next day, you got a big customer meeting. Your mind is focused on doing a good job. It is really, really hard. But I will say, if you look at some of like the most successful CEOs, the most successful entrepreneurs, the thing that sets them apart is they set time aside for sleeping, for mental health, for fitness, right? Like those folks are just relentless about those things because they know how draining it is, to be present in everything. Honestly, it's hard.
Yeah. I do want to go to, and I start with the Testbox days. And I know for a hot second, you were the chief solutions officer before becoming the CRO. And for a hot second there was this hype about chief solutions officer and that becoming a thing and like
Yeah.
solutions having a seat at the C-suite. And then I feel like it kind of just like died.
Yeah.
I'm curious from your
Yeah.
perspective, like what happened to that? Like
Yeah.
where does that stand?
Yeah. So I will say I was always the head of go to market. I was always like a chief revenue officer. I wanted to, after I left Pre-Sales Collective, took a break. When I made my job announcement, I wanted to come out as like the chief solution officer, right? To like show people like, oh, wow, this is something for real to like get some attention to it. It actually started with Vivin, right? When PSC and Vivin did some work and I did some work with Matt Darrow and his team, they were the ones who really were kind of championing that, right? And as like a chief solution officer, someone overseeing the whole solutions function. So for us, it was, hey, how do we push this and get this some awareness? I will tell you, there are chief solutions officers that became chief solution officers from what we did at Testbox, right? And it wasn't just what we did at Testbox because again, there was things that happened before that, right? But people who used my article to help get them job promotion, and it seems like it made a little more traction in the larger enterprise in the reality, right? The bigger, more complex companies like Alok Agarwal, right, at Rubrik is a chief solution officer now, right? There's many of folks, DeAndre Summercamp, right, chief solution officer. What I ultimately saw though, right, and I will say this is where things started to get spicy, is I saw what was happening to the pre-sales profession like 3 years ago. I presented at Consensus Demo Fest about pre-sales redefined, pretty much org collapsing. And I'll never forget, like I had people be like, James, you're crazy. You're wrong. Like that's never going to happen. Well, let me tell you that it happened at some of the largest companies in the entire world and the best software companies in the world. They collapsed the functions, right? So like I saw it coming. And so for me, I was like, oh, let's put a title on what this actually means. Now, that being said, I don't think it took off as much as it could have and it should have. It doesn't mean it won't, right? Because like this is where things get spicy. I talk to companies on a weekly basis at this point that are consolidating solutions engineering and professional services, consolidating solutions engineering, value engineering, customer success. These things are happening and like we don't have the titles, right? And so this is, maybe we can go there if you want to. I've been very aggressive that like I believe that the predictable revenue model is on its way out, right? And what is predictable revenue model? DR, AE, SE, PS, ES, support, TAM, all these adjacent roles that were built around internal silos and internal ways of working instead of the customer. And the customer and how software has changed has redefined how we go to market, right? Which is now why you're starting to see somebody was tagging me the other day is like, oh, like I hate this new title of GTM at, whatever company. Like the reality is like swim lanes are being blurred, right? It's about jobs to be done and about the outcome, right? And the accountability and the responsibility. So a lot is changing. And so without going too far ahead, just to come back, is like, I actually think the Chief Solutions Officer is a fantastic title and makes a lot of sense for a remit where you own solutions engineering, professional services. Maybe you own forward deployed engineers or a version of forward deployed engineers. And I just think that the org chart of, 5 years from now is going to look very different from the last 5 to 10 years.
I think I'm in complete agreement with that too, especially with the rise of these different AI tools. There's going to be functions that start to go away in some capacity. Like we've seen a lot of AI solutions tailored around the SDR, BDR sort of role. And not to say that I think that role is going away entirely, because honestly, what I'm noticing is that a lot of the outreach that like account executives are doing on LinkedIn email are sort of going into this echo chamber. And most like executive leaders I talk to, they say, I'm getting hundreds and hundreds of these types of emails every day. So standing out is becoming really hard, meaning, a lot of the traction that I'm seeing is still from people physically picking up the phone, calling, and getting people just, on the phone live and in real time to actually book calls and get them excited about a product. But I do agree with you that like things are going to rapidly start changing. Samir and I actually just did a wrap up podcast, the last one we recorded. And one of the things I've been predicting over the last 2 years now is that I still think that there is going to be this role that emerges of the account engineer. And then we're also going to have the sort of like solutions engineer that's sort of like taking you through the implementation process, where you're going to have SEs move into more of the account sort of work that AEs do, but they're not going to have to do the sort of like outreach that account executives
Yeah.
typically do. They're just
Right.
going to start fielding the intakes and then running those from discovery to demo through value and all the way through to close. From close, then it will get passed off into maybe like a forward deploy engineer, maybe a solution architect, solution engineer to build out custom things with the use of AI. And that's sort of the GTM shift that I'm seeing overall, and where I envision things will go with just the rise of AI and the ability for most solutions engineers to actually be able to take on more work than what they're accustomed. Like even for myself today, I am able to do X plus the amount of work than what I was able to previously do
Amazing.
with all the AI tools that I have. And at times, like I finish a week and I look back and I go, how did all this get done?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
amazing. But I'm also like, okay, if I'm able to do 2X, that means all the other SEs I work with are doing 2X. And when that happens, there's not a need then for X the amount of headcount in the company. And so
That,
the roles
that's
have
it.
to change.
That's it, Ryan. And I love the prediction. I also like your usage of go to market shift. You see why? Um, I agree with you, and I've talked about this with Jeff Margolese, who's my business partner with Solution Exec, right? And on the Go to Market Shift podcast, we talked about this on an interview, right? Because he disagreed with me that I think more solutions engineers will become account executives, and it really depends on the company, depends on the motion, right? But if you think about an inbound motion, right, there is no reason that role can't really just be a sales engineer, right? It can't be a solutions engineer, that solutions consultant that is running that process, and you can. People say, "Oh, well, solutions engineers, they don't actually have the commercial mindset. They don't like to negotiate." Well, you know who does? Frontline managers. And I don't know about you, but I've worked with plenty of account executives who weren't very good at their job, and their frontline manager did a lot of their work, right? So it's like, that is one of the things that will happen. And Ryan, you see this obviously in your job. These AI first companies, the go to market motion is very different than what we saw in SaaS. And I will tell you, before I decided to go full time in entrepreneurship, I was flirting with the idea of being a CRO in a couple of these AI first companies. And I went through a couple of processes before I decided to say, no, entrepreneurship's the route to go. And the go to market motion I saw blew my mind. Okay. Like I tell people, the idea of proof, it just was instant, right? We used to do these like 4 disco calls, technical SE disco call. Let's do a harbor cruise. Let me do a custom demo. And this custom demo just has your logo and some colors. Doesn't have anything else. That's not a custom demo. Then you're doing a POC, whatever it is, right? These AI first companies can, one, in the first call, show you your own data inside their product in the first call, or on the second call, like after you've given them the data. And the proof, just what I've been calling this is the collapse of the go-to-market motion, right? The collapse of the traditional sales process. And when that happens, the roles and the jobs to be done change. And so, yeah, we don't necessarily need, you might have account executives that are outbound and prospecting. you might have account executives that are just running discos and closing deals, right? So discos and demos and closing deals. So I love the prediction, and I'm totally aligned with it. And it's funny, I'll admit this, right? You know, I've been talking about this for a couple of years, and I got a little bit of flack from like very senior leaders that were like, I think it actually hurt my credibility. Right? I'll be honest with you. Like I was like, wow, these people are like, James, you make no sense. And so I kind of like, against my nature, drifted back a little bit on the topic. And then all of a sudden it just like accelerated. And I was like, damn, I should have been louder about this, right? Because it's not about I told you so, right? It's not about I told you so. And Ryan, like you're making that prediction now. It's about, hey, I just wanted to prepare people for what was coming and how to rethink what it is. Because when it does happen to you, and you are at that all hands meeting and your company announces a reorg and how jobs are going to shift, you don't want to be totally caught off guard. You want to be like, oh, wow, Ryan and Samir talked about that on that podcast a year and a half ago. I've heard this. I'm going to go back and listen to that. And I'm going to use that as a resource to prepare me on to be able to handle these conversations, right? That is what it's all about.
And for me, that's the biggest thing and why like I feel like it's so important for us to continue to have these conversations because for all the SEs listening today, I do think you need to start thinking about what you care about, what you're passionate about, and where your intention lies within your company to say like, do you like doing some of the pre-sale stuff? Do you like sitting on with your AEs and starting to think through like, how are we going to negotiate this deal? What sort of pricing do we need to put together? Can we get creative with the pricing structure? Do you like to have those conversations? If so, then when things do get reorganized eventually and the opportunity becomes for you to be an account engineer, is that something you want to do? Or if that's not a part of something that you want to do, well, then you need to start thinking about yourself as a forward deploy engineer. If you're like, I want to custom solutions and I want to solve the last mile problem that our product doesn't necessarily solve today verbatim, but I know I can build something using Cursor plus other AI tools and I can actually get them that last mile, then great. Like forward deploy engineering, solution architecture, maybe what's going to be redefined as solution engineering at that point in time will emerge, but you got to start figuring out like what avenue do you want to align yourself most with. And like, I've been super vocal about this with, everybody in my life, I would say is that like, look, I believe that I am a sales engineer.
Mhm,
Sales comes first.
mhm.
That means I'm always focused on pre-sales, go to market. But that's not to say that I'm not focused on the last mile effort. It's just like, I know for a fact, like for me, that's where I think I add the most value is like, how do we get creative? How do we go and show the most impactful demos from the very beginning to get those decisions to say, yes, I see it. I understand it. Let's move forward. I want to take the leap of faith with you guys and make sure that they're successful, organizations with products. And like, I know that's something that I've been passionate about from day one, but other people I talk to, they're on the other side. That's totally cool. But you got to be ready and starting to think about, okay, if that's what you want to do, you need to make sure that you're proficient with all those AI tools that help you deliver on those last mile solutions.
Yeah, I totally agree. Samir, I'm wondering where you're at on this conversation and like what other hot takes you have since we're dropping all kind of right ones right now.
I mean, I also think that this is where the overall market is shifting towards of lines are blurring. There's not going to be like if we go 5 years in the future and see what a job rec for a sales engineer looks like, it's going to be completely different. Granted that the job recs today don't really describe what we actually do.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they ever have either for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me right now is, especially with a lot of our listeners being a little bit more junior in the sales engineering space, there a lot of them are kind of newer, maybe within like the first 5 years of because the space is shifting and go to market in general is shifting. It's like how best do I prepare for that? Like where we're talking about the shift, we're talking about where it's going, but like me as an IC, like what James, from you, like what are things I should be thinking about, I should be studying or going and exploring and learning right now in order to prepare myself to be ready to have those conversations when leadership comes around, or to even be able to like, hey, manager, this is what we're starting to see, like can we try to shift our motion for our specific region, like how can I be a leader in pushing my organization
Yeah.
forward with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful question, and I think you've already nailed some of it, right? Is that you have to have a growth mindset into learning, right? I think that there are so many folks who say, yeah, I have a growth mindset, right? But like, are you spending that 2 hours you have a week listening to a new podcast, doing a training, going again, learning about AI, right? There are so many things that you have to do to stay up to speed with how fast the innovation is happening. Now, I will say that now is also the best and worst time to be in solutions engineering as someone who's trying to break in or new, because we saw this in 2020. Like, you couldn't hire solutions engineers, right? There weren't enough out there. Now there's a lot of really talented people looking for roles and looking for jobs, but there are now more resources for this profession than ever. I mean, think about it, right? When Pre-Sales Collective started, there was just a couple of things out there. Now there's all kind of resources out there. There's more resources. Obviously, I just started a new resource. Like, I hear people all the time that are starting things. And so you need to be a student of the game, right? That's the reality is you've got to be a student, and you got to say, okay, listen to podcasts. Okay, great. We have this podcast. What's James up to? Let me go to his website. Let me go look at his LinkedIn. Let me follow him and see what he's talking about. Oh, he brought on Jeff Margolese. Oh, I'm going to go to that person's profile, listen to the podcast with James and Jeff. And like, it's that intention, right? So for me, I'm an avid listener of podcasts, right? And I think for me, funny enough, I only like spot pick solutions podcasts. I hate to say that. I'm listening to a lot of VC podcasts because I'm trying to understand where their investments are going and what they're seeing from the early stage companies. That is what has always kind of given me a little bit of an insight into like what's happening. I have my own Maven trainings, right? Where we're teaching people AI workflows. There's plenty of resources, free or paid, out there to go and lean in and to learn what's happening, right? Understand workflows, understand AI, right? And then like where there's free resources of free trainings, kind of lean into that and then use your own company, right? If you're at a company, there's plenty of resources internally. For example, like Salesforce a couple months ago told the whole company, hey, if you want to be an account executive, now's the time, right? Now's the time, and created a lot of resources for folks to do that. And so obviously I threw a couple of ideas out there, but I think that the challenge I have for everyone is you have to be intentional about learning, and you have to have a plan to go and learn and to digest and build yourself a roadmap of where you want to go. Because life twists and turns, right? If I, 10 plus years ago, I'm working in hospitality and athletic operations. Who knew I would be following the solutions engineering and now be in the position that I'm at, right? So life will twist and turn, but you have to put yourself and prepare yourself for those types of situations. And so, maybe one more challenge to people all the time is try to network and make new friends with like 2 or 3 people a month. Like, the one thing I will say is I do hate when people reach out and say, hey, I just want to connect with you, right? Like, what do you want to connect about? Do you have a topic you want to talk about? Do you have something that you're navigating through? Like, be specific, right? Because you have to be valuable of people's time, but like, build that network, build that board of advisors. And so I think that's the best thing. The more you consume, the more you kind of understand what's noise and what's not, right? Like, what we could talk about right now could be noise, right? At the end of the day, it could be in 6 months or 2 years, you could like, wow, those guys were prophets. Like, Ryan and Samir, they predicted the future, right? So you just don't know, right? Until you know. So I think that's the way I would approach things. Just again, student of the game, right? You have to be a student. I've always found, I've got a saying for years is that the world is revolving around us. You have to evolve with it, right? I get so sick and tired of people being like, oh, well, I worked at this company. I've done this and that. I don't need to learn. Get the F out of here, right? You know what I mean? Like, how many SEs have I worked with in my career that have been like, I've worked at all these big logos. I'm good. I don't need to take that training. Well, look at how consumer has changed and how much demand has changed and how trust is broken. How are you adapting to that? How are you adapting? There's always something to learn, no matter what stage of career you are, how long you've been in the profession, there's always something to learn.
Yeah. So continuing on that line of path there, James, I think one thing that I would be curious about is like, say I'm a sales engineer right now and I want to become a CRO. Like, teach us. Like, what does that pathway look like?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in your role. I think you guys had mentioned something prior. Go talk to people in your company, right? Or in your network that have made the role, made the adjustments. AEs that moved to SE, SE that moved to AE, right? Go find out their journey. Ask them why. Ask questions. That's why I love LinkedIn and I love just general communities. Go on there and say, hey, this is my situation. Can I talk to you? SEs love giving their time and love helping, right? So you can talk to people. But I think you have to build a roadmap, right? So if you're an individual contributor, it's going to be very hard for you to go and get a sales management job, right? It's going to be virtually impossible for you to go get a sales manager job outside of your own company. Okay. So a lot of times, you have to go take a lateral move to an account executive role, right? Maybe it's a customer account role. You're in account management. You got to go and make that transition and use your solutions background as a superpower of like, hey, I understand customer experience. I understand customer service. I understand value. I understand trust. I'm light in commercials. Frontline manager, build me a plan to help me with commercials, right? If you are a solutions manager, you actually are in a much better place to make the transition to potential sales or sales management, right? But you have to get onto that track. Now, I think in the early stage, that's where you're at. Now, there are plenty of companies today that are doing levels of consolidation that will come to you as a sales manager or a sales director or solutions manager or solutions director and say, hey, there's a really unique opportunity for you to run this subset of your business, of the business. Are you interested? And my thing is like, take all the responsibilities and extra accountability that you can get. That is, where those opportunities are presented to you is huge, right? But you have to have intention. So no matter where you are, you need to go do a level of discovery, right? You need to go talk to people who are in this role, who's in this job, how they've made the transition, and then start to, actually like make that be known, right? Let it be known. You can't say, hey, I want to move to sales, but I'm not going to tell anybody, right? Like you got to let it be known, right? I will tell you, even when I was a SE manager at Showpad back in the day, my VP of sales, like one day I was like, oh man, I should just come be an AE. He was like, please come be an AE. Like when you, and I never went down that path, right? But you got to let it be known. You got to put it out there, right? Because you got to get champions in your corner that are going to help you and shepherd you through that process.
Man, that champion piece, I think we've talked about it before, of having people who are going to speak up in rooms that you are not in.
Totally.
And that becomes very powerful. And coming back to even that networking piece of, I think, speaking what you want to the universe, the universe listens.
Yeah.
And that's like to the people around you, because all of a sudden they hear an opportunity like, oh yeah, I remember Samir saying he was interested in something like that. Maybe I'll connect him. And all of a sudden, 2 years later, you're into a role that you only dreamed of.
It's like the movie Inception. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta like let that out there, put it in somebody's mind, and who knows, you get a manager who thinks it's their idea. They're like, hey, I've been really thinking about like, you should move to sales. And you're like, yeah, I should totally move to sales. That's a great idea, boss. Oh, I like it.
I know we're running close to time here, James. With, going forward with the, what I think 3 businesses now that you have spun up and whatnot. I guess, what are you most excited about for 2026 and like where the GTM shift is happening?
Yeah. Thank you. I love that uses of words. I think the one thing I want to highlight, it's like, it's easy to say you have 3 businesses. Like I've got 3 like really fairly successful businesses, right? Like that's what's pretty cool right now. Obviously success is as you define it, but like, I have employees, I have teams, like, these things are actually moving and they're generating revenue, but they're delivering value. And I think for me, I have never been challenged more professionally. Like I can't tell people like the context switching, like the meetings I have back to back are about different businesses and different events. I mean, I'm planning like over a span of time, like nearly a dozen events this year through different businesses. It's hard. It's hard to keep track. But at the same time, right? I'm signing off at 5:30, 6, being present for dinner, right? And being around my wife. So I think what I'm most looking forward to is the impact that we're going to make this year, right? I feel very motivated. I feel very excited. I feel very good about all the things that we're doing because I think I've diversified myself now that like, I'm not just focused. I love the solutions profession. But I'm not just focusing on the solutions profession. I'm focusing on the go-to-market profession in general. I've built relationships with VCs, PE companies, and there's just a lot that's happening. And while they're all separate businesses, they're all very intertwined. They're very intertwined. And I'll just give a shout out to Solution Exec because it feels like I'm home, right? I'm like where I needed to be, right? I'm where I want to be. And I'm building with a lot more intention this time around. So, Jeff Margolese and I have known each other for a long time and, pretty much decided, hey, like, let's do this thing, right? Let's do this thing. And so we're really excited. It hasn't been totally publicly announced, so I'll kind of slip it in there, but Jeff and I are writing a book on solutions engineering. So that was something I've always wanted to do. So that will get more broadly announced at our March 4th virtual event including maybe some in-person conferences and some different things like that. So I think this year is a year of impact. It's a year of clarity. I'll be very fulfilled both personally and professionally. And like, this is a massive challenge for me. And I want to put myself through a massive challenge. So I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to get on here with you guys and to be able to share and talk about these things. I think it's very easy just to like talk about things, but it's a lot harder to like make the impact and deliver, the value at the end of the day to people across where they are in their journey, because no one's on the same point in the path, right? Everyone's got their own things going on. So again, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I know that when I look back at the end of this year, it's like, wow, that was an impactful year that delivered value. And I'll be very fulfilled both personally and professionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think I speak on behalf of both of us when I say, when the time comes when you do have a book, you are welcome to come back on the pod, talk about the book. We're happy to help push it out to the audience as much as possible. I'll definitely be a reader of the book as
Thank
well.
you.
Just having followed along with all the work you've done and knowing how instrumental it's been in my career just to even get started, I think a couple of things that really stand out to me is like one, asking for the things that you want and, putting it out there in the universe. For me, when I wanted to get into sales engineering, I actually went out on my roof and I would scream on my balcony in Chicago and I'd say, I need a new job. And sure enough, the person who helped me get a new job was my neighbor. Now, she
No.
didn't hear me scream, but I feel like, somehow the
Yeah.
universe
Yeah.
spoke back in kind of weird ways like that. But, you have to go and make those things happen. So if you want something, asking, for help is always the best way to do it. Just telling people with intentionality, this is what I'm looking to do. And usually the world has a way of responding to that. But, definitely appreciative of you coming on here. Any final thoughts that you have for our audience today?
By the way, I love like to make it happen. I think too many people wait for things to come to them. Like, you got to go make things happen in life, man. You really have to. I think my last piece of advice is I think things are going to continue to be, and I'm trying to be a doomsday theorist. I think they're going to continue to change and they're going to continue to evolve. It's going to get a little rocky, right? But don't look at your job in a box. Don't look at your responsibilities in a box. Look at this as an opportunity, because I am biased. I will tell you I'm biased. I believe the solutions profession is so well equipped for this next decade and next era of SaaS. It's unbelievable, because if we're generalists. We could do so many things. And I used to tell my teams this back in the day, right? When I was first SE leader, I say, look, if there's ever a layoff and they start to go around the organization and say, who's delivering value? My team would have been one of the last people to let go. If you had asked us to be CSMs, we could be a CSM. You would ask us to be AEs, we could have been AEs. Wants to do implementation, we could do implementation, right? And so, that is a superpower. And so I want people to lean into their superpower, take this as an opportunity to learn, grow, and just know that like, if you put your mind to it and you work hard, like, you'll be very well equipped for the next era of B2B SaaS.
Awesome. Well, James, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you, and also another surreal moment as both Ryan and I looked up to you when we first started the profession. So it's really awesome to have the conversation with you, and looking forward to everything that comes this year.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words, and keep up the good work.
Yeah. Thanks so much, James. Best of luck.
Take care.
All right, Ryan. There was a lot in that episode. Ooh, I'm also like low key, not even low key. Like, I'm a high key fired up. I don't know about you, but I'm amped.
I almost stood up a couple of times to start like clapping and just like, for me, it's, and I feel like we've said this a lot, like when we have guests come on, like, it's very surreal to me to be sitting here today, to be in this position, to have James come on and just knowing like, like my introduction to James helped me get into this career. And now like we're here interviewing him and hearing about all the amazing things he's doing. It's just like, I don't know, man, literally gives me goosebumps, thinking about the journey itself. But, one thing that I'll mention about that journey is that, as soon as my friend told me about this role, everything from that moment on was intentional. Like I knew I wanted to break into this career. I started expanding my skill set. I went and got Salesforce certified administrator on a whim, just enhancing my technical skills. I networked with dozens and dozens and dozens of people from the pre-sales collective to learn everything about solutions engineering. As a part of those early interviews that I was able to land, I was actually able to navigate my way through some initial interviews without having any solutions engineering experience, because a lot of times they came back and said, Ryan, you know more about sales engineering than most of the people that we're actually interviewing that have actually been in the seat. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I'm a student of the game right now. Like I'm trying to learn everything I can to break into this job that I want, and now I'm here and now we're here. And so it to me, it's all really cool. And it was really fun to actually talk about like the future of everything as it might look and the shift that's happening. But I guess what are some of your thoughts?
I think one of the biggest things was exactly what you said of it reminds me of just like surfing. And so like within surfing, you don't know what the next wave is going to look like until it starts coming at you. But in order to be able to ride that wave, you've had to have done the preparation in order to have the strength to paddle, in order to be able to read the wave coming, in order to be able to pop up and stand up and actually ride it. And a lot of that pre-work of being a student of the game and actually learning, reaching out, networking, understanding allows you to then be able to pop up and crush that wave when it actually arrives. And so I think about that all the time when it comes to not only being an SC, but just also being an SC going into the future of I don't exactly know what skills I'm going to need explicitly. I have a rough direction of the broad categories of those skills. I'm going to slowly start picking up more and more of those so that when that time does come and that big wave comes, I can come and ride it rather than getting slapped around and crushed by it. So that was like one thing that constantly came in my mind. It was like, you're preparing for the next wave. Although you don't know what it looks like, there are skills that you can start to acquire now. So when it does come, you can capitalize and you can ride it.
I like James's advice is just being like, take every opportunity you have to learn, like take every opportunity you have to grab more responsibility. I think sometimes, like even for myself, I get frustrated. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this, like, and I feel like our old manager that we used to have together, Samir, did such a good job like navigating that with me of when I'd be like, I don't really want to do this. And he'd be like, this is a good opportunity, right? He'd always coach me up on that. And what it did was it expanded all of my skill sets into different areas that maybe I'm not passionate about, but now I have those skills to navigate those kinds of conversations. And so I do think like, grab the opportunities as you can, grab the responsibility that you can. And look, if you want to be more like revenue focused, like never miss a pricing call. Like that's step one. If you want to be more like customer success driven, never miss an implementation call or a kickoff call or sit through the first 3 meetings to make sure that implementation is going smooth. Like I think there's a lot of different areas that you can always expand these kinds of skill sets within your current role today. And nobody is going to like say like, no, Brian, we don't want you on this call or we don't want you on that call. Like if you can go and add some additional value and you can learn these additional skills, like you're just expanding your capabilities as a solution engineer. And you're also kind of planning for the future of what things could look like. Like in a world in which, these roles and titles and a lot of things collapse, like how many different functions can you do? Can you be the SE that does some deployment, that does POCs, that does value, that does customer success and does some marketing? Great. That's like bucket. That's a lot of roles that you can do, right? And I know you're doing a lot of that right now. So maybe you could already speak to that. But, I think it's important. Like if you can, do these additional roles, like you're setting yourself up for a lot of success without knowing what that next wave looks like.
Yeah, I like to call what I do right now a full stack go to marketer. Everything from cold outreach all the way up into onboarding, implementation, success, and so like the whole customer journey, which is a lot of fun, a lot of work. Some days I am like, oh my God, this is too much. Other days I'm like, oh, I'm fired up. And so that's how it goes, right? It's going to go up and down. You're going to have great days. You're going to have crap days, but that's part of learning. But the amount of learning in the such little amount of time is like something I can't get anywhere else. And that is something that I will be able to leverage in any role I go into the future. If I decide to go down the entrepreneurship path, it's like, oh, I already know how to do all of those things. And so I am very grateful for where I'm at right now, even if I'm working a lot, but it's fun. I'm having a blast. I think another thing that we touched on in the beginning is the importance of boundaries and being like present with your loved ones. And I think that was, it was really vulnerable of James to like share his struggles with that and like what he's doing to try and improve that. And I know that's something that I'm also very aware of and you're also very aware of, especially when, with a young daughter at home and my wife and I are talking about family planning and whatnot and what that looks like. And it's he was right. The most successful leaders and CEOs are also the ones who prioritize physical health, mental health, and being present with those you love, because that only fills up your cup. So you can show up at, you know, at 100%, 110%. And all of a sudden, when you are focusing on working, you're outputting a lot more. And when you're focusing at home, you're focusing at home. And so I wanted to call that one out as just something to keep in mind. Like, I was reading somewhere, right? The only people who are going to remember you working your long hours is your partner, your children, the people who you come home to, not your employer, not like the business, not your customers. Like, it's going to be the people who you miss that time with. And I think about that a lot, especially as we get more busy. When you accept more responsibility, naturally you're going to have to do more work, but you can also be strategic about it and figure out how I can enable systems. And yeah, that really touched a spot in me.
Yeah, it's actually something that I explore quite a lot in my life coaching. And one of the things that we talk about is just like your ability to do things efficiently. And so when you have really high energy, what that allows you to do is it allows you to get all your work done really efficiently. When you
Hmm.
have low energy, you're not working as efficiently, meaning, your ability to get all your work done from 9 to 5, it's a lot harder because you're dragging things out, or you just don't have enough focus to be able to knock things out as quickly as you need. So then 9 to 5 turns into 9 to 8, but if you can just approach things with high energy and you fill up your cup with the life that's around you, then 9 to 5 becomes easy and you can draw that line to say, okay, now I'm going to go be present with my family today. But I do think it's hard, man. Like James said, 30 years ago, you had to literally call somebody's landline to get a hold of them. Whereas today, I work in my office, in my home. And so as soon as I finish up work, I close my door and I'm greeted by all of my daughter's things that are all over the place. And then guess what? Like, even if I leave my phone upstairs, my personal laptop's downstairs, or my work computer's in the living room, or my watch is over here. It's like you're constantly surrounded by all this technology that has a way of pulling you back in, even when you try to like push yourself out. Figure out how to get those boundaries in place. Like, I feel like my wife does a good job of that too, where like as soon as I pick up the Slack message, she's like, hey,
Yeah.
family time. Encourage your partners out there to maybe like, be that voice of reason for you, because I'm not the best myself. So like having my wife do that is actually helpful for me.
Yeah. And then I think the last thing is just where I guess like the solutions role is going and where we will like our role is already so I don't want to say murky, but it's like very undefined. It's like a squiggly
Yeah.
blob, right? Like, in comparison to some other, like, engineering roles are pretty well
Yeah.
defined, product management's pretty well defined, marketing's pretty well defined, account executive, BDR, all pretty well defined, but, like, sales engineering and solutions is just, like, this murky blob, and I feel like it's only gonna continue to become more and more undefined as we start to seep into other places, and I think that's very interesting, but because of that, being intentional with what we want to do puts the onus on us as individuals to craft our careers. And that's a blessing and a curse because, my wife's on the medical path and that journey to get to your career is like lined up. It's literally like a train on tracks. And as long as you stay on the tracks, you're going to get to where you want to go. You go undergrad, do a particular type of degree. You have to go get your MCAT done. You have to apply. Once you're in medicine, you go and follow the 4 years. Like there's all of these steps, and then you pop out as a doctor. Not that it's easy, but it's just like well defined. But for us in like solutions, I feel like it's only going to get more and more undefined and we can't rely on, okay, sweet, I got into like an IC sales engineering role and I'll just go up the chain and become senior principal and maybe become a manager. Like you have to be really intentional about designing your career. And that's probably one of the harder things that I'm struggling with personally of, okay, in 5 years, in 10 years, where do I want to be? And then I work backwards to how do I get there? And because we can do so much, it's like, oh shit, I like this part, but I like that focus there. I don't know, like, have you thought about that aspect and like, have you figured
Think you had actually brought it up earlier today, and I was going to make a comment about it, but I wanted to focus on all the amazing things James had to say today, but you'd kind of brought up this idea of like what a job posting is going to look like for sales engineering in 5 years. And like, I couldn't stop thinking about this really funny visual in my head of like all the requirements that are going to be listed on there. And I'm like, yeah, like 5 years from now, like our job is only gonna get way more murkier than it is, and it already is, right? Like we had RV come on earlier in the year and we talked or earlier last year in 2025 and about all the different ways that solution engineering is titled and the way, organizations look for certain resources and like imagine what those job postings look like in 5 years from now. Like I honestly can't. So I think it's a really funny visual that I have just kind of like ingrained in my head from today's conversation. I don't know, maybe there's a meme in there.
Yeah, there's something there. And people already have struggles with defining our role. So it's only going to get harder. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited. Very, very excited. I do think, to James's point, we as a industry are the best suited for what's coming just because we're such generalists and we're able to fill in gaps within the business where they arise, which allows us to be really good at uh, adapting and learning new things. Cs are naturally curious, and we're always like interested in learning something random. I guarantee you, any SE has a random ass hobby, and they're like super deep into it, and they know all about everything, and it's something very obscure that you're like, what? Yeah, how do you know so much about it? Like XYZ, and I think every SE I know like just has that natural itch. So on the one hand, we are very well equipped for the next wave. On the other hand, it's going to take a lot of being intentional with your time, with your career, with what you want to do with your future.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up today. If you have some hobbies, like Samir mentioned, let us know. Like James mentioned as well, let us know like if this is helpful for you. And those comments go a long way for Samir and I and, really motivate us to keep on going and make more episodes and bring in additional resources. And one conversation that we are excited to have is a conversation around forward deploy engineering. So again, if there's any resources you want us to talk to you about that, I actually have a resource in mind, Samir, that I'm thinking about reaching out to for us, but some exciting things ahead for us.
Yeah, well, I actually have one last kind of funny story. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because James is working with Jeff Margolese, and my younger brother's a software developer at ServiceNow, and Jeff runs the whole solutions organization over there. And I went and visited him in San Diego. And during lunch, we were in the cafeteria eating, and I saw Jeff. And Jeff normally lives in Texas, I think. And so the fact that he was in San Diego, and I walked up to him, and I was like, hey Jeff, like we spoke very briefly on LinkedIn, and he's like, oh yeah, hi, like very, very nice. I'm sure he gets so many of those reach outs. He's like, you want a selfie? And I was like, oh no, 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 it's fine. But in retrospect, I should have gotten that selfie. I should
You
have
should have got a selfie. Come on, Samir.
offered it. I should have said, yes, let's get the selfie. So
Dang, you turned down an opportunity today. That's crazy.
I missed that. So if you listen to our podcast and you made it this far, next time we run into each other, I'll definitely get that selfie.
Amazing. Well, thanks everyone.
Bye bye.